Next from Springfield, Tom Cross, the former House Republican leader, announces his run for state treasurer and how he'll work to make the office more of an advocate for fiscal responsibility. This runs about 20 minutes.
Thank you all, and I want to say thanks to all my friends. A lot of the county chairs from around Central Illinois are here, and some of your old friends, and I appreciate you being here. But I also want to thank my colleagues, and that means a lot to me. I've worked with them, and when you're the minority, it's not an easy place to be, and you're often fighting. You have tough challenges, and sometimes you're heard, and sometimes you're not heard. These guys do an incredible job, have never given up, and continue to amaze me in their focus on their own districts. It's easy to come to this Capitol and forget about home. And none of these guys have. I want to just take a minute to say something about Raymond Poe. We went through and it's normal, we went through a rather difficult time as we were looking at picking a new leader to succeed me. And it caused a little angst. It causes people to be uncomfortable, and it causes people to get angry at times. And Raymond was one of the candidates, and he should have been a candidate. He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. He's a good political guy. And he cares about our caucus. And at the end of the day, I think it became apparent to Raymond that it wasn't going to work out. And it would have been easy, maybe out of anger or spite or just out of being unhappy because it didn't work out, to say we're going to have a battle and I'm going to keep it up. But Raymond Poe emerged as a real leader in a different way in our caucus and said, you know what, I want to keep this caucus together. I want to bring people together. It's important for us to be unified, and I'm going to take my name out and I'm going to support Jim Durkin. And I got to tell you, it was one of the classiest things I've ever seen in politics. And Raymond, you were really, really a statesman. That is rare and unique, and it struck me as a sign of a class act. It's our final stop. We've been around the state the last 2 days, and our final stop for this 2 day. We're going to be doing some other things in the weeks to come. But started out in Chicago, and it was a special beginning for me because my family was there, and they have been supportive of me, but they're not always out front. My mom and dad were there, and my mom's a retired teacher and principal and still active in what's called social emotional learning. And my dad was there, and he's a retired Methodist minister, as Raymond said. And the good thing about, I think Tim Schmitz joked that I had a preacher and a teacher in the family, and I thought that was a cute little line, and for Tim, that was a pretty good line. We were impressed. But we moved around a lot as a Methodist minister's family. That's what they do. You stay somewhere about 6 years. My mom and dad are originally from Alabama. We moved to Chicago in 1966. And while it wasn't fun moving as a kid, at the end of the day, it actually would turn out to be a positive thing, because you realize that whether you were in the south side of Chicago or in Yorkville, Illinois, what at the time was an agricultural community, there are different people throughout this state, and it's a very diverse state. It's a great state, but that diversity presents its challenges, but that diversity also is an opportunity to see that people come from different walks of life. And at the end of the day, we all are concerned about the same things. We're worried about our family, our kids, our parents, health care, college, education, etc. And my folks embraced that diversity and encouraged us to embrace it. And I think that helps you as you travel around the state of Illinois, whether you're in Springfield or whether you're in Lincoln or whether you're in Metropolis or Chicago. So it was nice to have them there to talk about that. And then I was fortunate enough to have my wife, who's a teacher. Our daughter's in school as a junior at North Central, wants to be a teacher. And you can imagine the conversations at our house about pensions. And our son was there, a senior in high school. So it was a special day, and it's continued to be a special couple days. And what drove me to this is, as I've looked at the challenges that we face as a state, and we all know them in this room, you're all followers of state government, they are daunting, they are immense, and they're at times very, very scary. And I think you can take a couple paths on this issue of the daunting challenges. You could move, like some people have chosen to do, and said, I'm giving up on the state of Illinois. It's so bad, I don't want to try. Or you can be involved in finding the solutions to these challenges and to take on these challenges head on. And I decided when a few years ago that I wasn't going to run from them as the leader. And I want to be part of finding those solutions. And we're not going to turn this thing around overnight. We need to be bold. We need to be innovative. We need to be creative. We need to be strong. All these guys know that, and they've done that in their respective roles as reps. But I decided that as I can do this, I can be more effective, I believe, by being a fiscal watchdog through the treasurer's office and make an impact and take on these challenges by running for treasurer. And that's why I decided to do it. I didn't come to this easily. I like the General Assembly, even those days when we don't get along, Brower. And, and that's okay. You know what? We have a great caucus. And we have a great caucus. We're going to continue to have a great caucus because when we didn't get along, we talked about it, maybe we fought about it, and we came together. And as exemplified by Raymond, when we brought us all together, we worked through all that. And so we know we need to take on those challenges. So I wanted to take on those challenges, and that's why, as much as it's difficult as it was to say I want to leave the General Assembly, because I think we did a lot of good things. We've done a lot of good things. These challenges are so difficult, and if you don't get your fiscal house in order, it's almost impossible to address these other issues in the General Assembly that we face on a regular basis. So it's imperative that we fix them. And I think as the fiscal watchdog of the state and to protect the taxpayers' money, you can do that as treasurer. And as you look at the decisions that have been made, or lack of decisions that have been made over the last few years, things aren't going in the right direction. We have skyrocketing debt, we have had record high taxes, and we have the nation's worst budget deficit. And what that means is it's becoming tougher and tougher for Illinois families to make it. And we need to move in a different direction. We have no choice. The numbers are daunting. As I said earlier, you've got almost $8 billion in unpaid bills, a pension system that we're struggling to keep afloat, as yet we continue to put money in it, and it's on the verge of crumbling. Bond houses are calling us a state that's on a collision course with bankruptcy, and we continue to put money into state government, and we're not serving the citizens well. So, can we fix it? Yeah. Do we have to fix it? Yes. And I think there are ways to do that. And one of the things as I talk to people as we've been around the state is I believe, need to understand what happens if we don't fix these things. We all talk about wanting great schools in Illinois, and we've had great schools, but we can't continue that if we don't have money to pay for those schools. You can't have safe communities and safe neighborhoods if you can't pay law enforcement. You can't take care of the elderly or the disabled or the sick if we're worried about paying old bills and can't focus on that. Jobs are very, very difficult in this state when companies say, I don't want to stay here, or I don't want to expand here, or maybe I don't want to come here in the first place. And so at the end of the day, if we're going to restore trust in the people of the state of Illinois and get a handle on all the financial issues, you have to look at things in a different way. And so as treasurer, I come at this based on my background. And I'm going to have a different approach from other people, and that's how that happens. Rich Brower is going to be a different state rep than the person that was before him. Same with Bill, and there'll be somebody that'll come along. And we all have our experiences in life that drive how we handle things. And I was a prosecutor for 9 years, and I was very lucky. I worked for a guy by the name of Dallas Ingebrigtsen, and he was an honest guy. He was a caring guy. He wasn't a prosecutor that was worried about more notches on his belt. He wanted to do the right thing. And justice was important, and righting wrongs was important to him. And that stuck with me as a political mentor and a prosecutorial mentor. So when I talk about the things I want to do as treasurer, it's based on my life experiences. And the first thing that I want to focus on is the budget. And we haven't had a truly, honestly balanced budget in this state in a number of years. The law requires that we do a balanced budget. The Constitution talks about a balanced budget, but yet through gimmicks and inaccurate estimates and supplementals, we find ourselves with $7.5 billion of unpaid bills. Clearly, we haven't balanced a budget. And I think we need to insist on a balanced budget, an honestly balanced budget. And I will use the Treasurer's Office to not only push the General Assembly to do that, but if I have to at the end of the day, we will use the courts to go to court to insist on a balanced budget, because it's that important. It's that critical to get us out of this hole and moving forward and be a thriving state, to make sure we start out with the basis of a honestly balanced budget. The second thing that I want to do is create a governmental integrity unit within the Treasurer's Office. We were recently charged by the SEC for filing false documents with respect to by going to bond houses. And it amazes me as a state that if you had done that in a private company and were charged by the SEC, you'd probably not likely to go to jail. But yet, we as a state did that. That is unacceptable. We have seen continuous examples of abuses in the pension system where a guy is able to go work for a day and become part of the teacher retirement system. So whether it's abuse, whether it's fraud, that has to stop. And with the Governmental Integrity Unit made up of former prosecutors, law enforcement folks, financial experts, I think we can be ahead of the curve in trying to prevent that. It strikes me as not working when you have to rely on the press or the U.S. Attorney's Office or the U.S. government to let us know about this fraud and abuse, and I want to stop that. Third thing I want to do is, I think we might have had a little better chance of not getting in the hole we're in if we had provided more accurate information in a timely manner to elected officials, to the public, and to the press. And I think we need to do a better job of providing data and information on all walks of life, budgetary numbers, revenue numbers, revenue estimates, pension issues, actuarial assumptions, so we can look at the picture of today, maybe on a quarterly basis, but also see where are we going to be, what are those pressures going to be in a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. I don't think government does as good a job as they can in planning like the private sector does or like families do. So at the end of the day, I look at this again in a little different way with my background of not just focused on counting the money. That's important, and keeping an eye on it and investing it. But to take it to another level, a different level of being aggressive and saying, how can the Treasurer's Office be involved in turning this state around and fixing unbalanced budgets, fixing fraud and corruption, fixing unemployment, fixing unpaid bills. And if at the end of the day, we can help balance the budget, and if we can bring down that unemployment, if we can fix the fraud and abuse, then we would have had a good run at the Treasurer's Office. So I appreciate everybody's interest. I appreciate everybody's support, and I hope you will join us in that quest and endeavor to make the Treasurer's Office an integral part of solving these daunting problems. Thank you very, very much.
Tom, what your role as treasurer, let's say, it's somewhat of a limited role in that you're basically investing the money that's sitting in the state's checking account. To what extent is your vision more grandiose than the current office is, and to what extent would it be more tied into the financial decisions, not only reacting to what the governor does? In the public sector, a publicly traded company will also give guidance down the road. To what extent would you adapt that kind of a approach to the office so that we say, here's where we are, here's where we need to be, but maybe we're off track and the governor better get it?
That's exactly what we're talking about. And you actually perhaps articulated it even better than I did. And I think that the whole idea of laying out the picture of the state currently and where we're afraid it could go or where it might go or where it needs to go is exactly what we want to do. Look, I think that we're in trying times, and I think that we are clearly in having challenges we haven't faced in this state in a long, long time. And the traditional idea of the treasurer just being the one investing money is certainly continues, and it's needed. But to help fix the problems, I think you need everybody working, coming at all angles, and comptroller, treasurer, the governor's office, the legislature. It's that bad, and I think that whatever role we can have, enhanced role to help us take on those challenges is very, very important. That's our point.
Leader, you talked about maybe needing to go to court to say if we have a budget that's not really balanced. Would you be in court this year with the budget that the legislature just passed?
Well, Bernie, as you know what happens. We leave on, May 30th or 31st if we're lucky, and we say, oh, we've got a balanced budget, and then we come along 2 months later and say, oh, those revenue estimates, the savings we were going to get from the reforms aren't nearly as good as we thought. So we plug those numbers in, and we overestimate revenue, we claim we've got reforms, and then they don't pan out. And so I don't think going to court is ever the first option. I think that is, I was a prosecutor, and I had to do it a lot of time, and I tried a lot of cases, and I spent a lot of time in front of juries. Sometimes you have no choice. But I think the responsible thing to do is to say to the General Assembly, in your role as treasurer, and say, hey, wait a minute, when you start going down that road from a supplemental, or your estimates, maybe you can prevent them from using estimates ahead of time. That is the ideal world you do. You try to stop that. But if you have to, at the end of the day, you'll use the courts to make sure we have an honestly balanced budget.
Do you think it's honestly balanced this year?
What I'm talking about is what we'll do when we're treasurer.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that we have an honestly balanced budget, and that will be the premise with which we start.
You also talked about doing all these things as treasurer. No offense, but there's a Republican treasurer now. Do you think Mr. Rutherford is not doing some things he should be doing?
Look, I have a different background. I think it's one of these things, once a prosecutor, always a prosecutor. And as I said, I was so lucky to have a guy like Dallas Ingebrigtsen, who was a good, honest person and a good public servant, teach me. And that's what it's a part of what drives me. And being in the General Assembly and knowing what really goes on drives me. So we just all come at it from different walks of life and different perspectives. And I want to use that state's attorney background to be vigilant and to be also a guy that can say, hey, maybe you do it this way so you don't get in trouble. And that's the point. But at the same time, if at the end of the day you have to go to the courts, for example, then you do that.
Tom, your counterpart is Speaker Madigan. He's often the whipping boy for everything that's wrong in Illinois because of the longevity he's been around. But relative to, say, fixing the pensions, which is the major issue, certainly one of the major issues facing the state and fiscally, is it your sense that Speaker Madigan is someone that wants to truly work in fixing this, or is he more concerned with the political damage that it might entail with the Democratic Party?
I don't want to speak for him. I can speak for myself, and I want to fix it. And I want to fix unbalanced budgets. I want to fix pensions. I want to pay our bills. I think the unemployment rate is incredibly awful, and I want to lower that. And that's what I want to do.
I know that Mr. Grogan is running against you, and I think there's a guy named Michael Scott Carter who says he's collecting signatures as well in Chicago. And I know Mr. Grogan has talked about we need, a financial guy or a CPA and not a lawyer. You call a CPA to fix the budget kind of thing. And I noticed, I guess this is a two-part question. I guess you have legislators up here. You were in the legislature, in the caucus that lost seats while you were leader. So how do you counter the idea that you are doing this because that didn't work out so well and the legislature's to blame for part of the problem?
Look, this was an evolution for me. I got increasingly frustrated with where the state was going financially. And I think the Treasurer's Office can be a place where you can make a difference on a grander scale, on a statewide scale, and being that fiscal watchdog and protecting taxpayers. I think you need to be a member of the General Assembly, or I should say, it helps to be a member of the General Assembly, because when somebody comes along and says, hey, that's a balanced budget, you can say, no, it's not. You know where the bones are buried, so to speak. And I think, I look at Judy Bartz-Apinka, who is a journalist, and yet is an incredibly, incredibly competent comptroller. And at the end of the day, Bernie, I see my role as a problem solver. I came in the General Assembly wanting to solve problems, as do all my colleagues. And if it's a budget problem, I want to fix it. I will analyze the situation, look at the options, and say, what can we do to get this state in a spot where we're proud of Illinois again? Because we're not there right now. And I've always been a problem solver, and I will continue to be a problem solver if elected treasurer. So thank you all very, very much. Appreciate you being here.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.